Jason Abraham, the Shadow Teacher, and today's video is going to be on the very serious topic of addiction. And I'm going to share with you some of the addictions I have struggled with in the past, and also share with you my process of overcoming those addictions and being free of their power in this current day. So first, I'd like to define an addiction. My personal definition of addiction is any habit or behavior that pulls you off the path of your soul's purpose, that fractures a sense within yourself, that diminishes the sense of wholeness, and that usually comes from a sense of pleasure seeking or avoiding discomfort. Addictions, again, habits and behaviors are actions that are repeated over and over and over and over again. And many times these actions come from stories and thoughts in our heads that are on a loop of repeating over and over and over and over again. And the last part of that definition, seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. Addictions often come from escapism and feeling a need to escape. And that was what I found in my case with my addictions. I was a musician, a heavy metal musician. I am a heavy metal rock musician, though not playing like I used to, not performing publicly as much. And in that world, you frequently find people who have drug and alcohol addictions. Many of my bandmates have had that. But those were not my addictions. I didn't have substance addictions. My addictions, my first big addiction was, in fact, video game addiction. As a young child, I was always drawn in by video games, but I also was bullied. And my parents were adamant about nonviolence, and they saw that I had a tendency towards violence. I got in a lot of fights. When I got bullied, I would fight back, and I would sometimes I just like to play rough, and they didn't want me to become any more violent than I already was, or what they saw I was being. But again, I was always finding myself in these situations, and my nature was moving me there. And without the structure of any kind of formal training that martial arts provided, I still sought this sense of significance and a sense of power. And I found that in video games. I found that immersing myself in this other reality in the screen, projecting my consciousness into the screen, and really taking on the life of these video game characters, starting to take on that life as my own, I've found a sense of power and satisfaction. And video games, again, what makes it an addiction was I couldn't simply play a video game and put it down. I grew up, actually this area where I'm filming this is where I grew up, and there's lots of land and beautiful nature all around me. But I was so caught up in video games that I never wanted to step out and enjoy the treasures that were always there for me. Any free time I had, I wanted to go back into that screen. And that is what I did. My mood as I would sit in front of a video game and not be able to put it down, would get cranky. I would always get more irritable and just flat out would become obsessive, just obsessive about going into that fictional world and getting immersed there. And that, again, that's the psychology of an addict. My body energetically started to tighten up just from the posture and my consciousness being drawn forward and in. And I was getting stiffer and tighter and more neurotic and just always felt horrible. But yet I didn't put two and two together. When I was a teenager, I just could not play enough video games. And at this time in my life, I felt I didn't really know what my sole purpose was. I had some clues, but I just didn't have the confidence in myself that I was going to be able to do it. At that time, I wanted to be a rock star, a musician, and go make it as a recording artist. And I did practice guitar. Thankfully, that was a positive thing I did when I was not playing video games. But I still just had this fragmented view of reality. And I just could not put the controller down. I know I've said that like a million times in this video so far, but that's what addiction is like. Now, what got me out of that, there was a stage where I started getting into exercise, and I started to feel the joy of feeling my body and expressing my body. I actually got into martial arts. I got into this other path because the video games I played, I wanted to be the living embodiment. A lot of those characters, like the Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat games, were huge for me. And even though I was escaping to the fictional characters on the screen, I still wanted to be a living embodiment of those heroes I was playing. And even though the discipline of strength training, of lifting weights and martial arts didn't give me the instant gratification of the video games, I was still invested. And I could still feel a noticeable difference in my physiology and my spirit and my psychology when I simply got up and moved. Now, at some point, I decided to go all in on this musical dream. And that was the point where I realized my soul's path at that particular time. And I realized that if I was not putting more time into activities and actions that contributed to me having success in that world, then I wasn't going to make it. So the willingness inside of me at that point, that sense of purpose, I was able to limit my video game time because I simply had something else that my soul was drawn to that pulled me away from it. So when you have an addiction, simply knowing that you have an addiction, which I didn't even know, I didn't look at myself as addicted. I just thought, this is something that I really enjoy, and I just don't care about anything else in the world. I just want to do this thing that I enjoy, and that's it. Again, which are kind of words of an addict. But what I found is you need something so positive that your soul is pulled to that gives you a reason to put this negative thing down. And again, video games are not bad in and of themselves. They were just bad for someone like me who was insecure and felt that need to escape. Again, the addictions have a splintering effect on consciousness. If you are a whole sovereign being, then you are less prone to addictions. But if you are not sovereign and you are not aware of your purpose, then these things that will come into your path that are basically a way for you to avoid dealing with the discomfort of discovering your path or the discomfort of the work that is required of you once you are on that path. They start to splinter your consciousness. Now, again, once I was invested in making my dreams come true as a musician, I just didn't have time. Again, that I was fully invested, and again, I got some synchronicities with that too, which made it even easier for me to stay on that path when I was doing that. So the video game addiction dropped away. My next addiction I'm going to share with you was actually exercise addiction. One of the things, again, that also helped me get out of the video game addiction was getting into my body. But initially, I was overcompensating. I was identifying and wanting to be something that I wasn't at that time. I wanted my physique to be better. I wanted to be the superhero on stage, and I knew I had to work out to get there. So I pushed myself super hard. And when you work out at a certain intensity, your brain chemistry changes. You get endorphins. You get kind of high off of the intensity. And from someone, again, I was obsessed with getting the results, and I liked the way it made me feel, so I just pushed more and more. Now, with training and physical conditioning, more is not always better. It's really an ebb and flow. It's push, break down, recover. Push, break down, recover. And not push, 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 push. And eventually my addiction to exercise led to all kinds of injuries, shoulder injuries, a torn ACL. And I was forced to deal with a new relationship to my training and my body at some point, because my body was saying, fuck you, I'm not going to let you do this to me anymore. And a lot of times it is that kind of pain that addictions ultimately bring us. The pain that we are not paying attention to from being unconscious. Once we become conscious of it and start to face it, then we start to move away from the path of addictions. But again, when we've done something over and over and over again, it's not easy to get out of. My addiction to exercise, again, it was actually not something positive that got me out. It was pain. It was just not being able to physically do some of these things anymore without a worse consequence. So I chose to approach it from a different point. I was just kind of forced to. These days, I'm thankfully free of the video game addiction altogether, and I have a very healthy relationship with exercise, a very balanced relationship that I learned from this painful process of addiction and escapism. So with all that being said, when we are light warriors, when we are coming in here honoring our soul contracts, when we're figuring out what those soul contracts are, we might be faced with distractions. We might be faced with painful situations that we want to avoid. And we might be faced by things that just taste really fucking good and feel really fucking good. Things that we just feel like we can't get enough of. But the life of a light warrior, a light worker, is all about balance. It's about finding what is enough and what is the appropriate measure that we engage in to stay on our North Star, our soul contract, our soul's path. So, if addiction is part of your life, I wish you awareness first and foremost. Be aware of it and know that the path out of it may not be easy, but there is a way out. And when you find that connection of your soul's North Star and you ask your soul to guide you, you will find that way out. And that prison, the key to that prison is within you. and you can unlock the chains that may be holding you back from embodying what you came here to do. Class dismissed.